What is going on, New York Giants fans? It is our bye week. Interesting week, folks. Welcome to Big Blue Avenue. I'm Tom Scavetta, joined alongside Sam Cardona, the girl who talks sports. And quick reminder, folks, little tag for our social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Big Blue Avenue. We appreciate everybody here. Sam, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. 2-game win streak, feeling pretty good. Tommy DeVito era that we're in right now. I'm pretty happy. How are you?
I'm doing good. That Italian hand gesture that I still can't quite figure out, but I do enjoy seeing it. I'm sure we'll chat about that later. But folks, we have a guest coming on shortly. But first, if you're new to the show and you want to know how it works, if you have any comments for us, feel free to drop them in the comment section. We'd be happy to get to them, interact with you. Make sure to leave a like on this video, not just because we like, but it helps with the algorithm, helps spread the show around a little bit more, how YouTube and Facebook seem to work these days. And without further ado, let's bring up our guest for the evening. Very excited to introduce her, the podcast producer at Meadowlark Media and producer of the Underdogs on the DraftKings Network. Sarah McCrory joins the show. Sarah, welcome. How are you doing?
Hey guys, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited.
I know. I told Sam, I feel like we're destined to be friends. We have all the same interests, and I'm just dying for another female Giants fan, Swiftie. I'm so excited to talk to you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. Nice to meet you. Yes, Sam. And with the big get tonight, thank you, Sarah, for joining us. Before we kind of dive into the meat of the show, where can people find you and your content, your work?
Yeah, so right now I'm producing a show called Underdogs at Meadowlark Media. You can listen to us on the DraftKings Network or wherever you get your podcasts. It's hosted by Jordan Brenner and Peter Keating, and it's kind of two guys that crunch numbers, figure out why long shots happen, why upsets happen in sports. It's really fun. Sometimes I join them on the show. But it's kind of, if you're new to betting, if you're a betting genius, it's a really fun show. And yeah, you can also follow me on Twitter at Sarah with 2 H's McCrory.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Sam. Let's get into it. I'll start with you here. We have a lot to talk about on this bye week, and I think we're going to bounce around here. And obviously 10-7 win over the Patriots, 2-game win streak. Giants are now 4-8 on the year, and we've hit our bye week. Let's kind of talk about an evaluation on this team. Unfortunately, it seems like this season has been riddled with injuries in 2023, an injury-riddled season, and it's been really, really tough to watch.
Yeah, it's been rough. I mean, especially this offseason, predicting that we were going to win 10 games, no problem. And we're sitting here at 4-8. But nonetheless, I feel like and I've said this in the past, this team for some reason always does so well when we're decrepit, when we're just the lowest point we can possibly go. It's you can't get any lower, so it has to go up. But they always seem to do well with this ragtag type of team, bringing in backups and things like that. Obviously, we're going to talk about Tommy DeVito, but his energy on the field and bringing, this Jersey energy to the other players and everything like that. But yeah, I honestly, our defense has looked great. First of all, they have just been doing an excellent job so far. The turnovers, the pick sixes. I think it's hilarious that we talked about it on Sunday, that they were saying that Wink Martindale and Brian Dable were kind of in this argument, and then Dable came out and was just the most argument we have is over the last piece of pizza. And I was like, that's, you can't argue with that. So, our defense is doing really well and our offense is working with what we got, and it's kind of the best we can do right now. And honestly, I'm kind of loving it. They're doing what they got to do, and it's it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, if that is any consolation.
Sarah, I want to hear from you. What's your overall take on this season and kind of I don't want to call it a fake story. I mean, opinion based, I guess you would say, about Wink and Dable possibly butting heads. Do you think there's any truth to that or not really?
Yeah, first, I think my feelings on the season, that's a loaded question. And I just need to preface this by saying, outside of, what we do in sports media, I am a toxically positive sports fan. I'm a toxically positive Giants fan. So I'm one of those people, we still could get that wild card spot. That's how I feel. But it's been a bad start. And had the Giants had a easier beginning of the schedule, had a few of those games fallen, had these wins fallen towards the beginning of the season, the conversation around the Giants would be completely different. And of course, injuries. I mean, the offensive line, we could go on for hours. I'm sure you guys have covered this a million times this season, but it's been an extreme twist of horrible, unfortunate fate. I think that by the time Daniel Jones went down with that ACL, we were all like, this is worse than we could have ever imagined. So I'm kind of at this place where I think once he went down with that ACL was when, I was heartbroken. And that was when I was like, all right, this kind of is whatever. And now, because I have less of a stake in it, I feel this DeVito, this kind of resurgence of this whole storyline is very exciting and it's fun. And it feels like the pressure is a little bit off. At least I feel the fans, because I'm also not a tanking fan, but we can get into that. And then as far as the Brian Daboll, Wink Martindale beef, so you could say, I think 100% where there's smoke, there's fire. I think it's pretty obvious these two guys don't like each other. I think it's pretty obvious that they behave completely differently. I mean, you have one that throws tablets and one that stays almost too composed. They clearly have different philosophies. I'm not saying one is better than the other, because I actually kind of like the hothead coach to a point. But yeah, I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think, we all have coworkers we don't like. And I think it's something like that. I don't know the extent of it. I don't know if it's really as true as Jay Glazer says. I mean, he's usually pretty right. So if he thinks that they maybe couldn't even stick out the whole season together, it leads me to believe it's a little worse than we thought. And I think Daboll saying the stuff like we got donuts or we fight over pizza, I think that's just him trying to save face in the media and say guys, it's fine, giving him the game ball, stuff like that, is just him trying to get ahead of the media storm with it. But hopefully they can work it out, because I would love for both of them to stick around for next season.
Yeah.
Love that.
We are
Sam,
also an anti-tanking podcast.
Thank
So
God.
we've had
I
this
knew you were going to be my people.
we are Daniel Jones supporters and we are anti-tank. So
there we go.
Yes.
I found my place.
Yes. I'm a huge Jones supporter as well. Probably, I'd say in 2021, Sam, I think you might have been a little more down on him than I was at that point. No?
I think we were
trying to remember.
We were struggling a bit, but I don't think I ever fell off. I think I was just like, I just want to win games, and he's just making it really hard to do this. But I can't say that I ever actually fell off.
Right. And now, speaking of quarterbacks, Tommy DeVito, the Paisan, from North Jersey, the Don Bosco product. I looked that up, the Italian hand gesture, because I don't know what it is, where it comes from. Apparently, it's a finger purse, also known as in Italian mano a borsa.
Okay.
So with all of his teammates doing it now, it seems like everyone has bought into this guy. He's played well. I mean, we know he was a game manager at Illinois. He managed the games really well, but he's proven that he could take shots down the field. He plays behind an offensive line that's improving, but it's still not good. Sarah, will start with you. Should DeVito be the starter for the final 5 regular season games?
I knew we were going to talk about this, and I was thinking about this earlier, and I don't know. I think that there is such an argument. If Tyrod's healthy and he's ready to go, he's got a veteran presence. He's obviously comparing the two, he's a better quarterback. He has the experience. He makes really good decisions. But there's something about this team, and I think it can't go unnoticed. And anyone who works in sports, anyone who's an athlete knows how important this kind of like culture around him, and that the team is bought in on him, and he has kind of ignited this kind of resurgence in this team. And I think that that just can't go unnoticed. And he has this confidence and this kind of swag about him. And I don't know. To answer your question, I don't know. There's a solid argument for both of them. And I think like if I was, if I had to make the decision right now, I'd probably roll with DeVito. At least give him another game or two to see kind of if this is just lightning in a bottle, or if he can kind of keep up making accurate throws and kind of making good decisions.
Definitely. I think that the one thing about Tommy DeVito is that he is not like a product of what John Mara wants as like the face of the Giants. So it's very different than Eli Manning, than Daniel Jones, like he is this more, outspoken kind of guy, this, with the Italian personality and all that kind of stuff. Like we haven't had something like that on this team, at least not for a very, very, very long time. And you could see like his energy is rubbing off on other players. Like you have Saquon Barkley running around screaming like Jersey, and you're just like, you were born in the Bronx. Like how do you have Saquon Barkley running around screaming Jersey? So I just feel like I agree with what Sarah said. Like Tyrod's been so substantial for us, and he's done a lot for us, but he's also just been riddled with injuries. Like I don't want him to come back and be, half of a quarterback because he's still dealing with a rib injury or so on and so forth. If Tommy DeVito is rolling with it, like if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of deal. It's working right now. We're going to be going up against the Packers, which I think is a semi-winnable game here with enough confidence and enough, momentum with what's going on, especially after a bye week. Prime time, like who knows, maybe Tommy DeVito thrives under the lights. But I love the hand gestures. As someone I'm not from North Jersey, but as someone from Staten Island, this is something that I've done my entire life. I literally had a whole conversation with my father, and he can vouch for me, where we were like talking at each other and we were both going like this, and we didn't even realize we were both doing it. So the hand thing is great. I love the confidence. I love Tommy DeVito Sr. in the crowd, just, getting everybody riled up. It's a little bit different than what we've had this entire time. So I'm rolling with it, and I'm excited to see them in prime time and how that whole thing kind of plays out.
I mean, this guy has children
Sam,
lining up
this at Billy
outside of a
Joel?
deli, like to meet
Literally.
him for hours. He's shaking hands. He's kissing babies. Like I would say, I think I'm leaning now as we're talking about it. Like if he's got the locker room, just keep it there.
That's what I mean.
At least
Yeah.
for another game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with it. So here's my take on this. It might be a little different, but I do agree DeVito should be the starter. He's not better than Tyrod Taylor. That's not what I'm trying to say. I don't think that's what any of us are trying to say. Taylor's not under contract after this season. You want to find out the future of this team. Joe Schoen wants to build years forward. These final 5 games, you find out if Tommy DeVito is your backup quarterback heading into next season in 2024. I think that's what you're trying to get out of these final 5 games. So I'm with you. I'm on the DeVito train for now. Big supporter of his, big supporter of DJ, Tyrod as well, but we know Tyrod likely won't be back in 2024. Way too expensive of a quarterback contract to keep. But we know a quarterback who will be back in 2024, and that is Daniel Jones. In what capacity? I'm not so sure yet. But, Sarah, do the Giants see him as the long-term answer? Or is the writing on the wall? Are they drafting a quarterback? Maybe not a 2024 replacement, but an eventual replacement for this guy.
Oh, man. I don't even think the Giants know if he's their starter going forward. Look, we just talked about we're all Daniel Jones supporters. One of my fantasy teams is called the Daniel Jones Fan Club. It was a really tough day for the Daniel Jones Fan Club when we had to drop Daniel Jones. But I think he's proven the talent to me. This injury is not his fault. an ACL is brutal. I've talked to so many athletes that have, rehabbed ACLs, and it's not, okay, you're ready for game one, you're back to where you were. ACLs really take almost a full other season after you're back to really get back to that prime. We saw it with Saquon the year he was back, wasn't really there. The next year, that's when you can really cut on that knee. So, God, it's hard. I think as much as it pains me, I think they need to take a quarterback or they need to trade for someone. I don't know what that kind of looks like, but they need to have a viable starter that is not Daniel Jones, I think.
Adam says, who cares about DeVito? It's very sad that the question is about a backup, and Daniel Jones will be out for 12 months. Respect the opinion. I do. I really do. Disagree with you, Adam, though. I mean, DeVito might have a role on this team in the future. I mean, he has a role right now. Just beat Bill Belichick. No undrafted rookie quarterback has ever done that.
There you go.
I mean, don't get me wrong. New England is not New England of the past, Sam, but I think that is something that should be said.
I also just want to point out that like having a solid backup quarterback is something that we really do need to look forward to, because if you look at someone like Gardner Minshew, which, yes, to be fair, he did have a starting position at one point in his life, but over the years he has been a backup quarterback, and the Colts are kind of rolling right now. Like, Anthony Richardson goes down and he comes in and like he's a very, very good backup quarterback. I mean, Nick Foles freaking won the Super Bowl. Like, when you have a good backup quarterback, that is the best plan to have for when things like an ACL tear happen. So I think that it is a conversation to be having, because that's what we're dealing with right now.
Cole G, keep rolling with DeVito. That's right. Why mess it up? Why mess it up?
Exactly.
Which kind of leads us into this whole discussion about what he has around him, right? His offensive line. I mean, for me, Sarah, I mean, Sam knows me for years now. The issue with me with Jones is not his play. It's his health. It's his injuries. Jones can play. I mean, last year, maybe I went a little overboard saying he was the 10th best QB in the league. But look, he's proven that he's really, really good when healthy. This season, that has not been the case. He doesn't get past his first progression a lot, especially under pressure. The offensive line still gives up a bunch of sacks. Yes, they've shown signs of improvement over the last couple of weeks, but what do you think of the offensive line? Do you think that there are pieces here that might be around long term, or are there guys on this line that you're like, I'm just not? Obviously, Pugh is back. Glowinski's been in and out of the lineup. Evan Neal. The question's mainly Evan Neal. That's what I'm looking for here, because Sam and I are not really too high.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to be high on Evan Neal, but I also think that I'm still at this point as a Giants fan where I trust Joe Schoen and I do trust Brian Daboll. And, Shane said in his presser, he believes that Evan Neal can get back, or he can get to where he needs to be. So I think where this team is at and how young they are and kind of where they're at right now, I think it's worth it to give him another year. I also think, going back to the Daniel Jones thing, it was absolutely not Daniel Jones' play. And it's one of those things where it's impossible to even evaluate a quarterback when they're playing in front of an offensive line that is this bad. And even though Daniel Jones this season was making some pretty bad decisions and was not playing at the highest level he could and was not playing the way he was last season, a lot of that is due to the offensive line. It's kind of like a chicken or the egg situation. I know even Peyton Manning said that game where Daniel Jones got sacked 11 times. Of course, you're going to make terrible decisions when you're getting sacked 11 times. Like, there's just no way that you are playing at the highest level that you possibly can. And I don't think that there's a quarterback in the NFL that could play behind that offensive line, at least at that point in the season. I think last week they showed improvements. DeVito takes some sacks that I don't like, but I think the line held up a little bit better than they were, but it's awful.
Sam?
Yeah. It's I mean, we've talked about it so many times, Tom. Like the offensive line is just falling apart. And with the injuries and with, Evan Neal who's not improving, like it's it's tough. It's tough out there, and I think Sarah just said it best, like we're just dealing, you don't want to see your quarterback get sacked 11 times. You don't want to see your quarterback get sacked, but how many times he get sacked last week? 9 times, like DeVito. So like, you don't want to see it, but I'm surprised with the way DeVito is used. Like he's like almost like coming back from it a little bit more than Daniel Jones is. Like Daniel Jones, it's also different body types. Like DeVito's much shorter. Daniel Jones is like a big old green bean. So he kind of just like falls over, and you're just like, oh my god, like he can break every bone in his body. But overall, it's like, yeah, it's a major concern for us. I mean, we have a lot of major concerns, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But I think that we're seeing this right now with Joe Burrow, who they didn't draft an offensive lineman and they drafted Jamar Chase. And yes, they have an incredible connection. They made it to a Super Bowl. They almost won. But now Burrow is hurt again. And he's like that offensive line just still doesn't look good. So it's like when you have those guys up front and your quarterback is protected, bad, mediocre, or excellent quarterback, they're going to play a lot better when they have more time with the ball. So I think that offensive line is definitely one of our first priorities in the draft in April.
It has to be the priority. Like there is no point in drafting a quarterback, even if we forget Daniel Jones exists. There is absolutely no point in drafting a quarterback if they're going to get sacked 11 times. Like it's just, that is like the number one priority. And how long have we been saying this? Like it's been like 10 years. So
yeah,
that nothing will work if you don't have an offensive line. And I don't care. People can talk about Houston. They can talk about all these like different things where a quarterback can help an offensive line. Sure. But you need to get some guys in there that can help.
No, it's literally like having very expensive china and no cabinet to put them in. Like they're going to get broken. It's just the way the world
exactly.
works.
I mean, we know AT is playing through an injury this year, so his play hasn't been up to par as far as like top 3, top 5 tackle level. John Michael Schmitz, I thought, had his best game yet this past weekend as an NFL center. Justin Pugh at left guard, not a long-term answer, but maybe he'll come back as a backup next year. Ben Bredesen is on a contract year. He's an average NFL guard, might be worth keeping on a cheap deal. Mark Lewinsky, there's an out. But then Evan Neal, I'm really convinced that Shane said what he said in his press conference so that Evan Neal keeps confidence in himself for the remainder of the year. He can come back if he gets back healthy and can play out right tackle. If there's a transition to guard, it'll happen in the offseason. It won't happen in season. It just won't. I mean, that's the reality of it. He struggled, but the talent is there. There's so much raw talent. But when I'm seeing these boneheaded plays of him blocking his own players, or Marcus McKeithen turn the other way around looking at Saquon, it's like, how much confidence are you supposed to have in any quarterback? And it's not just the O-line, it's the trenches itself. I mean, I was so high on Azeez Ojulari, Sarah, and coming out of the draft, he's been the biggest disappointment on the defense this season. He's been really bad. I mean, he's always hurt. What are your thoughts on Ojulari? I don't know what to say about him anymore.
Did we lose you, Sarah?
Oh, might be on mute.
My mic got unplugged. Sorry.
There you go. All good. Sorry, I'm lagging out as well, but
We can hear you.
No, I heard you. Okay. I think I'm
editing's
back.
a great
Sorry.
thing. That's why we do that.
Yeah, to answer your question, like it's kind of like what we're saying about Daniel Jones, where it's like, regardless of talent, I can't stand continuous injuries and guys that just can't stay healthy. And I feel like this brings up a bigger conversation that we could have later, but like at what point are all these injuries, of course you can't prevent an ACL tear, that kind of thing. What at what point is the Giants organization held liable for all of these injuries or some of them, you know? So I don't know. That's kind of where I feel like I'm stuck with a lot of players. And someone just said Aziz Injalari, which is exactly right.
We've constantly talked about the turf, the artificial grass, all the crap that's going on there too, but we can't blame all of it on that. You know, there is some other aspects there because there are so many.
Yeah. Sam, what do you think about that with Ojulari? Obviously trading Leonard Williams this year. I mean, going into the bye week, we're starting to see more out of players like DJ Davidson, Jordan Riley, guys who were drafted mid to late rounds. And it's looking like Joe Schoen is doing a real fine job drafting players. Sarah mentioned it earlier. Joe Schoen has done a lot to help our trust in him, even through a bad season. I mean, the Bills, the second year of that regime, with being McDermott when Dable was OC and Schoen was assistant GM, they went 6-10. They went 6-10 a year after making the playoffs. So hitting on these mid-round picks like a Micah McFadden, we're finally starting to see more out of Jalen Hyatt. Just, I don't know, just what do you think of Joe Schoen and what he's done? Because personally, I think everything he said in his presser was on point. I don't think there was a single thing that I was like,
yeah,
this guy's weird. Did not think that at all.
That's interesting, though, that the year after they made the playoffs, they went 6-10, because it's very, very possible that that's what our record ends up being at the end of the season. Yeah. And they're, after that, obviously they made a huge run in the playoffs. Obviously not a Super Bowl appearance, but they did it. And, that's hopeful that next year is going to be a little bit better. We don't have that Bills team, but they can build this offseason. They can draft. But no, Joe Schoen, we said it when we were talking about them being on the hot seat. Like, Joe Schoen is not on the hot seat. It was Brian Dable whose seat was getting warm, because Joe Schoen is doing his job and he's doing what he needs to do, but he's doing everything correctly. We might not see the immediate results from it like tomorrow, but like you said, as time is going on, like, we're seeing it unfold. So I can't see, Joe Schoen, doing anything specifically wrong that's going to hurt us immensely. I feel like we've only been doing well apart from all of the injuries.
What about you, Sarah? What are your thoughts on Joe Schoen? Because obviously Gettleman got 4 years and he was bad. Joe Schoen has done everything right. I think he should get at least 4 years himself. I mean, I think he's doing a fine job right now, personally.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like I said earlier, I think for now I trust him. And I kind of think similarly with Dable. I just don't think it makes sense to like continuously rinse and repeat the same exact thing and bring in new people. At some point you need to, say we're in a rebuild and actually stick to it. And I think that's where fans kind of get lost, because the Giants did overperform last year. So I think people forget that we're a long ways away from being the team that people want them to be. And I think Joe Schoen is doing that. And I think he also holds himself accountable. In that presser, he talked about things that he could have done better, talked about things he could have drafted better. So I think I'm rolling with him for now.
Sarah, we know you're on a time crunch, but before we let you go, who has been the most impressive rookie so far this season? And do you have any like record, maybe predictions, Saquon, McKinney, two guys on, contract years, how they'll perform in the second half of the season?
Those are tough questions. Besides what we said about DeVito, I'm not going to go with DeVito, but I think, the standout from last week is obviously Jalen Hyatt. I think it took him a minute to get going, but he had his first 100-yard game. I think that, like, this is why you can't be a tanking fan right now, because these games are so important to these young guys. This is so important that people like DeVito, Jalen Hyatt, that they are going out there and playing hard, and we get to see, they get experience. And I'm really happy that he had that game that he had last week. And then the second part of your question was
guys that Honestly, record, because we talk about
Xavier McKinney, right?
Guys who won't be tanking. No one's tanking on this team.
I just like when it comes to Saquon Barkley, I think that it cannot be overstated the impact that Saquon Barkley has on this team. Like Saquon is the captain. You can tell the games when he's out, it is a different vibe. He carries this team even when he has no yards. He's carrying this team on his back. And I think that the Giants have to make it work with him. And then as far as record, I can't even begin to predict record. Of course, I want them to just win out, possibly. You know, the Eagles will sit their starters by the time we play them, and the Giants will make a wild card spot. I don't know. I can't even begin to predict the record with this season.
Well, Green Bay, New Orleans, Philly,
Eagles, Rams,
Eagles. So that's what it is. And Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Quickly, if you have a couple seconds, can you just plug yourself one more time, and we'll make sure to include your links in the description and everything so that people can go find you and check you out.
Yeah, cool. Well, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Sarah H. McCrory, MCCRORY. And then same thing on Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, I'm not usually in front of the mic like this. I'm very much a behind the scenes person, pulling all the strings on podcasts. I've produced tons of podcasts, New York Post, Religion of Sports. I'm currently at Meadowlark Media doing some shows with DraftKings, specifically Underdogs. If you like to, you know, have high risk, high reward bets, you come listen to us. Sometimes I join them on air. I did unfortunately take the Packers this week, at least to cover, because they've been playing pretty well. So yeah, that's where you can listen and catch up with me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Sarah. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.
Right. Have a good one, Sarah. Take care.
You too. Bye.